Hello, you're listening to Do Yourself a Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better, and each episode I'll be talking to my guests about their epiphanies, their inspirations, and the magic of their workflow. And I'm here today with Karin Ovari. Hello, Karin.
Hello, how are you, Tim?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for joining us on Do Yourself a Favour.
I love that. What a great title.
It's officially a 5-star podcast because one of my friends gave it 5 stars. So there we go. It's official. Yeah.
Or
Yeah, see if we can knock that down a peg or two. Would you like to tell everybody who you are and what you're thinking?
well, my name's Karin Ovari. I'm the CEO and designer and developer of safety culture programs of 2 businesses, actually. So one is my own called Karin Ovari, which really focuses on probably executive coaching and digital facilitation, designing and mentoring, actually. So helping people use facilitation tools to really bring their programs to life. And by mixing all of those things up, I've created my other business, which is Safety Collaborations, which is where we deliver large-scale safety culture change programs around the world, and we're delivering that using technology. So those 3 things are all coming together very nicely. So that's kind of where I am today, but there was a journey to get there, needless to say.
Excellent, and hopefully we'll get into that a little bit later. So we'll get right into it. What's something that you wished you'd learnt sooner?
I spent a bit of time thinking about that question, and funny enough, I think it's that imperfection is perfection.
Okay.
So it's okay for, I've often said in the past, unless you're a brain surgeon, 90% is good enough. But I think and I have certainly been guilty of that over the years and still have to fight this, desire to, no, it's got to be just here and the lines have got to be just lined up and it's just got to be just so before I can let it loose on the world, and that perfectionism can be a real hindrance actually to getting things done. So I think, and so I've been working on this for the last 20 years is to stop worrying about that perfectionism. So I think that imperfection is actually, there's a beauty in imperfection. There's a lovely Chinese or Asian story about the pot with they fill it in with gold. Oh my God, what's that name? And it's about making the imperfection beautiful.
There was a fantastic thing I saw on, I think, Instagram or maybe one of the other socials, where there's an artist who fills in the cracks in municipal sports courts.
Oh, I saw this, I think.
With gold in the same way. So it kind of, so these big aerial photos of inner city basketball courts where all the cracks have been filled in with gold. And it's that same kind of idea of, fixing old pottery with gold so that the breaks and the cracks and everything tells a story of its.
Absolutely. And the imperfection is lined with gold, it has a lot of value to the whole process of whatever we do. Yeah.
What do you think you'd have achieved or done differently or not done if you'd have learned that sooner?
Not so much differently, but I think I might have got a few things done sooner, actually.
Okay.
So because I think I assess that, my perfectionism can lead to procrastination,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a reason. There's somehow this inner feeling of not being able to let it go. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I think there have definitely been times in my life where I think we could have got projects finished sooner. And so I'm quite conscious of that these days. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to hand this over to you. I've done the big picture thing. You now finish it to the level that, that we believe that we can put it out into the world, sort of thing. So letting go letting go of things and delegating. And I think it's a really, even thinking about it right now, I think it impacts so many areas of life, actually, from how we feel, how we look, to how we perform on the job, whatever sport, whatever it is that we do. I suspect it's a very big challenge, actually, this imperfection. Perfection.
It's an interesting tension, isn't it? Because there's in that whole sense, done is better than perfect, and delivering and putting things out into the world, nothing's ever going to be nothing's ever going to be perfect. And then there's that tension with the idea in lean and process improvement that we should strive for perfection and constantly try to improve. But that's, I think the difference there, and I'd not really thought about it before you said that, but it feels like the difference there is that one is about holding on to something and not letting it out there until it's perfect. And one is about recognizing that nothing is ever perfect. So just getting it out there and then improving it as you go along. So it's kind of almost the striving for perfection, knowing that you're going to be forever striving for perfection, allows you to release things, let go of things sooner, maybe.
Absolutely, I absolutely think that's true. It's all about acceptance, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. There is probably this letting go, and I think it plays into the same way. It's accepting that we are where we are, put it out there, get feedback, and maybe you'll never get feedback, which probably means it's just fine. And what I perceive as imperfection may be absolutely perfect to the next person. Right. And I mean, I think there's an iterative process in this day and age when we're talking about lean and agile and those elements. There's, that we look at iterative fail type things. And I think it's great because I think it gives us the opportunity to let go. It provides a space to let go and to get on to the next thing, because it's not the end of the road.
Yeah. So there's the sense that because nothing's ever really finished, nothing's ever really going to be perfect, and actually there's that opportunity to refine. And I suppose one of the drawbacks of holding back on things when you are just waiting for it to be perfect is maybe actually you're perfecting it in the wrong way, because until something's out there and being real, can you really know what perfect is?
Good point. Probably not, because it's based on our own observations, and we are all observers of our own world. So unless we let it out there and get some feedback, how do we know? We can only assume it's based on the way that we do things, and assumptions are often very ungrounded.
What was it that made you realize that this was something that was holding you back?
I've probably been told a couple of times, actually, over the years, not so much in the last 10 years or so, but certainly before that, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect, Kaz. Let it go. It's all right, So that was, probably some warning signs there, loud ones. But also, even within myself, knowing that, look, I'm going to be late with this, whatever this is, if I don't just accept that it is fine the way it is. And I probably did learn that 20 odd years ago, to be fair, and particularly when it comes to working with teams and people and developing leadership skills, you get to a point where, 80% actually is just fine, unless you're a brain surgeon. Then I want you to be 100% sure. But are they? No, they're not, actually, So I think it's just been a slow burn, actually. I think it's just been, with everyday thing, okay, look, really, this is good enough. Let's just get it out there. And it depends on what it is as well. I'm quite creative and artistic. So for me, I like things to be just so that they have a certain look and aesthetic and feel. And, and I mean, I can see with my eye, whether a line is straight or not, where most people wouldn't even notice it, whether two dots are actually on the same plane or not. So it's fun, but it's also a bit of a curse,
Yeah, I have said a number of times to people, I'm not a designer, but I am really fussy.
Yeah.
And I think there is that tendency to kind of go, well, I've got a very, very clear idea how I want it. So the idea of passing that over to somebody else who's better qualified, higher skilled, got more of a chance of actually doing it properly, I just know that I'd be a really awful client.
I build my own websites now because I'm a held client for web designers because they want to have a clear define. And I have no idea what that is. I need to do it while I'm doing it, and then I can define it. So that's actually not about imperfection. That's about not knowing what I need. But
and finding, and part of the journey is finding it, isn't it, as you go along?
That's how I work. So it's in the writing, it's in the designing, it's in the creating that it all blossoms.
And then I suppose you'll get to a stage where actually, when you've gone through that process yourself, then you can articulate it. So maybe it's almost that it's just too soon in your process to be bringing in other people, maybe.
Absolutely. I think that's a really valid point. If I think of one of my sites now, I've sort of got to a point now where I think, you know what, I could actually bring, and funny you actually mentioned this, because I was actually thinking, it's now at a place where I could hand it over to somebody and say, this is what I need on this page, make it happen, because I now know what it needs. Whereas before, from a blank canvas, I couldn't answer that question. So it's a very good point. Mm. That just relieved me a lot.
Well, that's why we're here. So let's carry on exploring this a bit further. So what I'd be interested to know about is a book or a concept or a conversation or an epiphany, if you like, something that made you think differently about your life, about the direction you're going in, about the way you do things.
You probably gather I'm not going to be able to answer that with one definitive thing.
Yeah, very few people can, but do it. Yeah.
No. But I will say that I think one area of work, which was, well, two areas of work for me. One was when I was doing my ontological coaching studies, we talk about the moods framework. And that was a real revelation, actually, understanding, because moods and emotions are pretty much the same sort of thing. And this actually leads into the second part, which is actually emotional literacy. So they're very related, actually, just as I'm saying this. We talk about the moods framework, which is the basic moods framework you have. It depends on what's possible, what's not possible for you, what is fact, what's uncertain. So there's certainty and uncertainty, what's possible, what's not possible, what is keeps you sort of anxious. So when we look at them, we have resistance, we have resignation, and we have anxiety at one level. So where we don't accept what's going on, or we're not sure what's going on in the world, under those three categories. And it's about shifting from resentment to where you need to move. A better mood is moving from resentment to acceptance, actually, or from resignation to ambition, and not ambition to buy a new car, but ambition to move forward in life, and from anxiety to a world of curiosity and wonder. Now, of course, moving from those things, if somebody's in high resistance or resentment, I should say, about something, they're probably angry, they might be depressed, they might be very sad. There's quite a scale in there of emotions that sits under this mood. And that was incredibly eye-opening for me. So a lot of my epiphanies have been through, learning. I guess that happens for all of us. So when I was doing my coaching program, this is an 18-month deep dive, quite intense development program. And it was interesting because all my childhood and all sorts of things came flooding in, as they do on those sorts of very deep development work. And that was amazing. And the difference, and understanding what's the difference between a mood and an emotion. And really it's just time. So we can I might be fearful because I've just seen a snake, right? That's an emotion. As soon as the snake's gone, it's gone. Yeah. But I might live in a state of fear. And if I'm living in a state of fear all the time, then I'm probably living in one of those moods of anxiety where I'm fearful about everything. And my body is reacting certain ways constantly. The neuroscience comes into this. There's a whole range of things that comes into this. So it really is time is the difference between the two. So I can be anxious for a short time, or I can be a very anxious person. And we're probably one of the easier ones to recognize, I guess, is when you meet someone who lives in a world of resignation, meaning, well, why do we have to change that now? Same shit, different day. You can't get them out of that. It's almost like the half cup, half empty. Not always, but it is a little bit that way. But it's more about they're just resigned to, this is it, and I can't do anything about it. So they just don't accept that they can do anything. So but if we can shift them to a space of ambition, then they go, oh, well, okay, let's try that new idea. That's a good idea. Let's move forward. So working with teams and people and individuals actually around the moods framework is really very powerful. And it's certainly made a difference to me. And I'm always learning. I mean, I think it'll be I'll be learning this theories and knowledge till I pop off. And that sort of led me even then down the road of emotional literacy, which is a book that I love and recommend to many people, actually, The Unopened Gift, because many people don't realize that emotions are what drive us. They are what make us do anything in life. Without them, we're dead, basically.
Mhm.
So they drive the chemicals, they drive what, and it's actually emotion. It is, that's what they're about. So that's been quite, especially in the last 5-6 years, has been really quite eye-opening for me. And I'm working on it all the time. So it's not just about emotional intelligence. It's actually really understanding, well, what does anger really mean? What does happiness really mean? What is that emotion? What is its human distinction? What is its concern?
Okay.
Why does it matter to me? So we talk about emotions from what we call as they are our predispositions for action.
Okay.
They predispose, I can't get the word out. I need water or more coffee or something, right? They predispose us towards whatever we do in life. If I'm unhappy about something, well, I'll behave in a certain way. If I'm happy, I will behave in a certain way. I will have different feelings. My body will be in a different shape, a different position. My eyes will be brighter. My cheeks might be rosier. There's a whole range of elements that get involved with this work. Yeah. So that's I think that whole world of understanding moods and emotions is just an ongoing journey, and it's amazing how you can make a difference in people's lives when you talk about it, when you get involved with it.
When you talk about the emotional literacy and the understanding of emotion, is that from a metaphysical level? Is that literally the kind of neurochemical processes that go on to make us feel like that? Is it a little bit of both? I mean, where
It's a
does
bit
it
of all of
sit?
the above.
Okay.
It's even going back to the anatomy of the word anger,
Okay.
or fear. I mean, most of us sort of think there's about 14 emotions that we live with. We're either angry, we're happy, we're sad, we're whatever. Actually, there's well over 250 that we live with all the time, and sometimes many of them are playing it together at the same time. Or we might be confusing anxiety with fear. And interestingly, fear is usually something that's known. We're usually fearful of that thing. Anxiety, one of the ways to help, I won't say cure, but one of the ways to help review anxiety is to give it a name, give it a fear, turn it into a fear, actually, because then you can do something with it. But, if you don't know that you're afraid of spiders, you can't do anything about it.
The other one that I feel interesting, and we've run into a few times with my eldest, is that line or connection between, say, sort of fear or nerves and excitement, because they're really the same kind of thing. That it's a very similar feeling.
I was about to say physiologically, fear, excitement and fear, or, let's say fear and excitement may have very similar physical reactions. You might get hits of, one will be adrenaline, the other will be cortisol, and, and both can be good in small doses. Both can save us from situations. So it's, physically they could feel the same. It could be butterflies in the tummy, or it could be, a bit of nervousness and that sort of thing. But the actual, what we do, our behavior for both will be different. Yeah. And maybe then what we say will be different. How we show up will be different. So one, it comes down to what's the human condition that the emotion is trying to serve.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So, for example, a more very common explanation, if I've got a saber-toothed tiger coming at me, then I want to be shots of cortisol. I want to feel that I can run. I need the adrenaline. I need the cortisol. I need to get away from this thing. The problem is when we live in that state for too long, it then becomes a problem for us. And cortisol can live in our system for around 27 hours, whereas, and if we're constantly giving ourselves hits of cortisol, then we get stressed, then we get sick, then we are physically become debilitated. So what we need is to have some of these other happier hormones like oxytocin, which is what they call the hug hormone, or what's the other one you get when you're endorphins and things. Anyway, you start to increase all of these. They only last for 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
So you can imagine if somebody's okay, I might have a smile now, but for the most of the time I'm sitting in this state of cortisol overload, then it's really, I need more kindness to myself. Often it's something we need to do to ourselves. So that's kind of where that the chemical, the neuroscience, and I'm talking at this at a very high level. And I'm not a neuroscientist, but between conversational intelligence and the ontological work, I've done done a reasonable amount. So it's about understanding some of these chemicals and what it does for us. It helps us, that propels us one way or another.
I feel sort of weirdly without agency, as I sort of feel, as you sort of talk about like chemicals propelling me. I feel like a sort of balloon that's just been like slightly untied, but it's been quite a long day, so it's possibly that. So we're moving now into the section of the podcast where we talk about our workflow and things that make our lives easier. And what I'd like to tell us about is something that's not your laptop or your phone that you use every day.
Which is exactly what I wrote. Yeah. In work, and how do I get through my days working? It's really hard for me to think beyond technology, funny enough, because I really think, if my laptop fell apart, I'd be quite lost, actually. I'd be like, oh my God, what do I do?
And where do you live technology wise? Where does Karin's work get done?
In a variety of places, actually. A lot of it is through Zooms and microphones. I use my calendar, my Evernote, I struggle with Trello, funny enough. Yeah, there's software applications that I love. HouseSpace, which is my digital facilitation platform. Well, it's not mine, but it's the one I use and implement. And I spend a lot of time designing those now for clients. My home, actually. I like my home. Nice. And this is where I work as well as live. So and I have boundaries in the home around that. I'm fortunate enough that I can, So I definitely have a home office upstairs, and the rest of my life is downstairs. I can't live without. It's funny, I've often thought about that sort of question, and people say this and the other. I mean, once upon a time I would have said my hairdryer, but it doesn't make any difference to work, really. Actually, what I would find very difficult is if I couldn't connect with people. Today, technology in general really would I would find that very challenging.
I do think it's interesting that the impact that the pandemic had on the acceleration of collaborative networking and video conferencing and communication tools, because it was, people were less comfortable with them right at the very start of the pandemic, and things like Microsoft Teams and some of the others have by necessity had to accelerate the level at which they've rolled out different features in order to just be able to keep up with what people need, what their customers need from them. And I do wonder how long it would have taken, say, I don't know, teams to add breakout rooms if there hadn't suddenly been this need caused by the.
I agree with that. And I mean, I'm an absolute fan of Zoom. I think it's still the best of all of them. But, some of the others are definitely moving along. If I think of a year ago when we were running a virtual facilitation conference back in March last year, at the end of March last year, I mean, we would spend 20, 30 minutes just making sure people were comfortable with Zoom. We would use slides, we would direct them, show them, spend time creating activity around it. I've dropped all of it because we generally 5 minutes might be all you need. It might be a new tool to somebody, but they much of a muchness really now. So, people get the concept of, okay, this is the screen, this is how I can mute myself, this is how I can turn my camera on and off, that's a chat, that's a whatever, they might be in different places or whatever, but the principles of them are all there.
I wish they weren't in different places.
It would be easier.
I find it massively challenging to move from one platform to another and just find that I'm actually just like switching my camera on and off rather than muting or whatever. It's very, very frustrating.
No, this is true.
I'm interested. You referred to it very briefly at the beginning. You've moved around a lot. You're somebody whose journey has taken them around a lot of different parts of the world. When you said you like your home, what's home? How do you make a home? When you move a lot, how do you make home? What does home mean?
There's a wonderful song, home is where you hang your hat. And I think for me, home is wherever I am. And it's always an interesting conversation I have with my Aussie buddies. So when are you coming home? I'm going, I am home. No, home. Yeah, Australia was one of my homes. Right now, I mean, it's interesting. This is the longest I've actually lived in the same house in my entire life. I mean, from birth, we were always moving as well, even as kids. So as my parents. So for me, and I'm very good at making a home. I love making homes. Whether I own them, rent them, it doesn't matter to me. It's my home, so I'm going to make it as best I can with reasonable financial whatever. It's important to me. So I am quite a homebody, even though I love to travel and to move around the globe if I can. Look forward to that again one day.
Well, one day it's opening slowly, I think. What would be, I suppose, so let's flip that question around and think about it from the negative side of things. What if somewhere didn't feel like home, what would it be missing for you?
Atmosphere. So a sense of calm. I mean, I can pretty much live in a small box or a big place and make it feel like something. So a sense of, if it doesn't have a nice feeling, I don't know, it's such a funny thing. I walk into a house and go, oh yeah, this is it. I walked into 10 before this one. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. And it was just that it's a feeling about a place as much as anything. The other thing I need is space. As contradictory as that just sounded when I said I could live in a box, but I do need to be able to see out. Like I need to be able to see into the distance. So if I've had small units and things back in Sydney, but they always had a view of some sort. So with enough space, for me, living on top of each other is not pleasant. So that's probably why I live outside of cities now, because I just like the space that I can see. I don't have to use it particularly, but I just like to know that it's there. And home is somewhere I just feel safe, a place that I feel safe. And that can be anywhere. That can be on a yacht. It can be in a house. It can be, so somewhere, if I'm going to unpack my bag somewhere, I need to feel safe in that space.
I think there's something about my answering that I was kind of thinking, how would I answer this question? And I think it's something about feeling like you can just leave your stuff anywhere. My wife would no doubt be absolutely furious with that, but I think there's certainly there's definitely a sense of like of not needing to confine yourself to a particular area or live within a certain like restrictions or constraints. I think that's what it would come down to.
Definitely, where I can come in and I can plonk down and I feel it's a feeling. It's just like I'm here. I have lots of stuff around me. Actually, I'm not a minimalist, although I don't like to be overstuffed. But everything has to have a bit of a story. I mean, even I look at this vase behind me. It's 30 years old. That came from Indonesia, and these are dried flowers. They've been with me literally since the 90s. Sometime, they've come from Australia. They've landed in Scotland. The other thing I have to say is my cats. I love my cats.
So, what is the most recent thing that you bought or acquired that is really useful and that what's a new shiny thing, Karin?
Bit of a shiny bubble girl. So, but I put down here, believe it or not, a dynamo labeling machine. The old-fashioned labeling machines. Because I do like to put things into containers. I like things to be contained and organized. So now I can add these fabulous labels to them as well. So my dynamo labeling machine.
That made me so happy. Makes me so happy. As you're aware, kind of my Bible and my book that I live by, Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Yeah.
And he has quite a whole chapter. It feels like a whole chapter on automatic labelers. Yeah, he's a big fan of labelers, and I resisted it for a very long time just because it felt. The first version of the book came out in 2001, and it's quite quaint to read it now because he talks about Palm Pilots. And he talks about computers in that sense of being, you remember when the internet was in a room in your house, when you had to go to a room where the computer and the internet was. And that's kind of the metaphor he uses a lot in the beginning of the book. And he talks about dictaphones and voice recorders and things like that. And he talks about labelers. And I just put the labeler in with all of this kind of like quaint early noughties technology that was being thrown around. And then I got one, and I got one because I was sorting through. It was when we were redoing this office room, and I needed to sort out my filing, and I got all these like manila folders that had like my scrawling Sharpie on them, and just like I was like, right, I want to sort these out. And so I got a label maker to label them all up, and suddenly it was like WD-40. You know how when you've got a can of WD-40, you just wander around looking for things to put WD-40 on. I was just wandering around with this label machine, going, right, what needs labeling? But there is something about the way when you are in a process of organizing, there is something. It's very, very difficult to describe, but it feels so neat freak. But when you're actually in that process of organizing, actually that process of labeling things in that way just feels a little bit more proper. And it's almost like the opposite of the broken window syndrome, where actually it's got a label on it. So now I've got a folder with a label on it for that. So now I'm going to put things in that folder, God damn it. And I also had to label a lot of things for my little boy as well. So he's got like a label that says things like horse.
A great way to teach him how to spell.
Yeah.
Turn it, click, turn it. I didn't, but it was a manual one.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no, none of this typey one. No, it's a good proper, no, I think it's downstairs. Proper handheld little one, and you just got to turn the wheel.
Like, kicking it old school.
Old school. No, it's a wonderful, wonderful process.
I wholeheartedly approve. I would like to assure everybody that I did not put Karin up to talking about labelers on the show. No. I am beyond happy that is what has made your life so much easier in recent times. That's right, made my day. Okay, we're on to the home straight now, and I'd like you to complete the sentence, please, Karin. Do yourself a favour and
take a deep breath and know that all will be well.
Lovely. Go on and give me the why.
We all go through moments where we feel anxious about things, and we get nervous about things, and we freak out about things, and we overreact to things. And honestly, by taking a deep 2, maybe 5, maybe 10 deep breaths, scientifically can help shift everything. So the deep breath is actually really important in that. And it does end up giving you a sense of, okay, I can do this. I got this. All will be well. There's a great book, and I can't think of her name right now. I'm terrible at remembering authors' names, called The Universe Has Got Your Back. And I actually think it does, if you let it. But you need to breathe into it.
And that feels like as good a place as any for us to bring this to a bit of a close. Karin, where can people find you?
Well, luckily for me, I've got only 10 letters in my name, and it's unique globally. So you can type in Karin Ovari, Karinovari, into anything, and I'll turn up. So I do have a website.
It's like looking in the mirror and saying Candyman 5 times.
I have 2 websites. So I have karinovari.com. I have safetycollaborations.com. And that is exactly one word, Safety Collaborations. And the other great place to find me is on LinkedIn at Karin Ovari.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. Do yourself a favour. Excellent. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye. You've been listening to Do Yourself a Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. Brought to you by Make Work Work Better. My name's Tim Sismy from Make Work Work Better. Our theme tune is by the Titanics. Talk to you again soon.